VR is...
It is time for us to adopt a new company brand.
I'm not a person that believes you should use VR every day.
The hype has faded, especially after job losses at companies like Meta.
Missions have not lived up to the hype, and
Mark Zuckerberg isn't talking as much about the metaverse.
Our company is now Meta.
Interesting.
Our mission remains the same. It's still about bringing people together.
But was it actually worth it? Every year, almost like clockwork, we get the VR is dead, the metaverse is dead. I'm Jarvis Johnson, and I wore a default Quest 2 head strap on my head for a week and wonder why I hated it. Videos or articles pointing out that VR is somehow dead and buried despite it having a very obvious, very sick, dedicated audience that uses VR every day, some more than others. Is VR actually dead? Well, unless Mark Zuckerberg drops his multi-billion-dollar investment anytime soon, you'll hear it from me first. But the TLDR of this video is no, of course not. Get clickbaited, dude, my bad. I like VR, but I also like views. Thanks for watching my video, Grandpa. VR is unlike anything in the current tech or gaming industry we've seen so far. Nothing like VR, or more specifically the Quest 2, has had users standing in their rooms for hours and hours on end while waving around your arms like you're a toddler after you take away their cocoa melon. The fact that not only we as gamers got sold on an extra $300 device we didn't need that requires some physical activity, but also that we like it. But again, VR is definitely interesting.
I mean, we had set out that we would just do this on our own way, and really, the very beginning...
Oculus Rift Step Into the Game launches a Kickstarter with a goal of $250,000, but ultimately garnering $2.4 million as of this video. Last updated in 2016, we have quotes from John Carmack, notably from id Software, Cliff Belinsky, design director at Epic Games, and my personal favorite, Gabe Newell, the president and CEO of Valve. But even though we have some solid backers of this technology, this was still definitely a point of controversy for some people. VR is dead. Long live VR. Published in 2016. VR, the newest trend in tech, is dead on arrival. Published again in 2016. CampaignLive.co.uk cited the reason as it wasn't a social experience, despite VR chat being released 2 years prior. Of course, we have the typical, it's pricey, which obviously doesn't hold up as well today. MarketWatch says the HTC Vive is difficult to set up, needs a big play space, and you'll most likely trip on your cable. While they're not wrong, you know, Kiwi makes a pulley system. They're not paying me to say that. That's just the one I use. I couldn't go back. It's great. Try a pulley system. Regardless, this might get me some heat, but before the Quest 2, I could totally see why VR was in a shaky state that had many outside influences looking at it like it was already dead. The price for the PC, the price for the headset, the games on top of that. Unless you already had a good enough PC at the time, you most likely weren't going to spend a couple grand to play Super Hot or Robo Recall. Add on the bulk, limited native VR games, and you have a good reason for the general audience to say that VR is just a tech demo. But again, this doesn't mean that VR was going to die. Even at the time, we had diehards like Gabe Newell, John Carmack, and Palmer Luckey. And with the rising popularity of games like VR Chat, VR was nowhere dead, but definitely stuck. Stuck without a...
And of course, we're launching Oculus Quest, the all-in-one headset that we have all
Today we don't have these problems. The Quest 2 is light, easy to set up. Everything initially criticized about the OG VR headsets were quickly diminished by the Quest 1 and the wildly successful Quest 2. But regardless, VR is still dead. TechCrunch cites the reason that VR doesn't have its killer app despite games like Bone Lab, Breachers, Half-Life Alyx. I could go on and on about the insane amount of content we have. Futurism says that because of the Quest Pro's less than ideal sales numbers that the metaverse is dead, despite no one even knowing what the metaverse was truly supposed to be. Regardless, this is why VR is dead. But I just want these journalists to know, VR is already here. It's already been successful at least once. The Quest 3 is on the horizon, and again, there are plenty of diehard enthusiasts that will always keep VR alive to some degree. Also, Apple just announced their fucking headset, dude. What? Like, what? What? VR dead? VR dead? Apple just released or announced? Fuck. The Quest 2 brought forth that VR not only had its place in the tech and gaming scene, but also showed that people were at least somewhat interested in this technology. Sure, the Quest 2 does have its problems, but name one piece of tech that doesn't have at least something that could be better. The iPhone 14 still running a port that has USB 2. iPhone dead. Sorry, guys. Apple is going under. iPhone 2.0 gate. I'm calling it now. Someone get wired on the phone. I have their next article. But I haven't even mentioned the 20 million units the Quest 2 sold. We just had an all-time peak in VR headset sales, and it's still growing. Gorilla Tag alone sold $26 million in revenue, and nearly 1 million people played on Christmas last year. But yeah, no, VR dead, dude. VR's this f***ing dead, dude. So the Quest 3 comes out in the fall. So what are we looking at in terms of retention in the long term? We know that Meta has actually acknowledged this in the past, but are they actually going to fix it? Firstly, software is king. Nothing is going to drive people more into VR that we actually have something to do while in VR. We have solved this problem a little. Games like Breachers, Bone Lab, Into the Radius, and Green Hill are prime examples of a game developer developing out of passion instead of monetization. While we do have games like Asgard's Wrath 2 coming to the Quest 3, most of the kids who are going to try Asgard's 2 haven't played the original as it's still a PC VR exclusive. They could pull a Vertigo 2 and just explain the ending, but besides that, we got the Assassin's Creed game Nexus coming to the Quest 3. The pre-rendered 30-second trailer that shows no actual gameplay that got 5 minutes of coverage at the Ubisoft Connect, despite being teased at the Meta Gaming Showcase. Hey, it's this dude, CEO at Ubisoft. Show me some more gameplay for this game, bro, please. To go over every single game, they revealed that the Meta Gaming Showcase would literally take forever and be boring as because the showcase in itself was boring as. But despite that, we haven't really been shown anything that has been super intriguing to the general VR audience. GTA San Andreas VR sounds really cool, but when's the last time someone brought that up at Meta? Quite honestly, when they released Resident Evil 4 VR, I was actually really excited because it showed that these classic games could work really well in VR. Most of the driving sim community in VR is on PC because you have the best selection of accessories in games. Put Gran Turismo on Quest 2 and don't make it stink this time as a foot. Maybe people actually enjoy. But again, this is also the best spot VR could be in. It wasn't long ago that VR was basically unheard of outside of the mobile phone scene or the big dick PC rig builds. I actually just started working in an electronics store that has a VR display with a Quest 2 and a Quest Pro sitting side by side, and it just made me think about how VR has come recently. While the future of VR is definitely a sight to be seen, I'm glad that it's still a sight at all. Also, I just finished writing and realized I didn't mention HTC or the Big Screen Beyond or anything about the Deckard. So whatever you think VR is, a gimmick we've just been force-fed by Evil Man Zach, or a great time to be had with friends in VR chat, the only device to play Beat Saber on, I think we should all be thinking about VR just a little bit. Thank you to our mega rich patrons, Mike D10, Wes, Gain, Lunaris, Denasi, and Only Mints. And of course, thank you to our budget-friendly patrons as well.
So I didn't really mean to exit this first out was feral and expert. Didn't mean to do that, but you know, you'll love to see it. Also, I don't know if many of you know this, right? But I go to the gym pretty frequently. Dude, this light makes me look fucking cut, dude. Like, god damn.